What's up, y'all? It's JB here. I'm going to be doing the intro. We are crazy busy in the heat of things for summer, so all of our schedules are crazy. But I'm so thankful that Brody was able to sit down and do this interview. He grabbed Blake and Taylor, who's a married couple, and they actually came as chaperones. They're youth leaders in their youth group, and it was just so cool to hear their story. Brody has known Blake's dad for a while. They've been connected with Swo for a while. And so he was just catching up with Blake and hearing his story. And Brody said, hey, man, would you like to share this on No Sanity on the podcast? And so I'm super grateful and thankful for their vulnerability and their just such short notice to come up on NSR and share their story. It was super impactful and encouraging for me to hear. And I hope and pray that their story impacts you and encourages you. And like I said, man, they're awesome. So vulnerable. It was just so cool to meet them and to hear their story. And so, yeah, that's what we'll be getting into. I really hope you guys enjoy. Welcome to No Sanity Required.
Welcome to No Sanity Required from the ministry of Snowbird Wilderness Outfitters, a podcast about the Bible, culture, and stories from around the globe.
How long y'all been married? 7 years?
Going on 7.
And y'all were childhood sweethearts.
We were. You say childhood. I know, like, we met in first grade, and it was only first grade in that class that we were together. Very quickly, starting from second grade to ninth, she was doing so well in school, and I was your average boy, and so we got separated pretty quickly.
Like a creek water drinking kind of kid.
Yeah. Yeah, she was worried about reading books, and I was out drinking creek water, that's for sure. So it wasn't until ninth grade that we had got back into the same classes. We had seen each other, but that was about it. And then it was ninth grade. I was like, what's different? What's different about Taylor Cooper over there? They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, no, something's different. One of our leaders here, his older brother was at the time with me, and I said, that's her. He's like, what do you mean? I said, that's the girl that I'm going to marry right there. And he's like, yeah, okay. And she made me fight for it. But
you know what that I'm just thinking about right now is I got saved the summer before ninth grade.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's right.
But the summer before ninth grade? Oh, that's cool.
It was like probably 3 weeks before. I was like, how am I going to go to high school as a Christian? Oh, no.
Wow, that's cool. So, like, in retrospect,
I was a lot different, actually.
That's cool.
Oh, yeah. I would stare at her from the back of the class, and I was really slick, but apparently she saw me the entire time. I was not slick.
Slick.
Super subtle.
Oh, yeah. Super subtle.
Stealthy. You're still very stealthy.
And y'all got married right after high school.
Yeah.
We did. Graduated 2017 in May, and then by August of 2018, we got married. Yep.
So when you grew up at Madison Street.
He did.
Oh, you did?
I did.
So I know Blake's dad, but he used to go to FBC, and now goes to Cross Church. These are all area churches in Stark, Florida, where these guys are from. So when did you end up at Madison Street? Was that because of your relationship with Callahan, one of the pastors there?
So I grew up, I was, when my parents had me, they were at an older Baptist church that didn't really have a young foundation there. There was no next generation really coming up. So they had tried out Madison Street and were hooked, and they had been there all my life. And so I'd stayed there because that was my family. I was plugged in. Mom and dad, what it was First Baptist was splitting. I'm not quite sure what you want to call it, but they were turning into a new church. Somebody was taking that. And so they had come and talked to some Madison Street people because the people who were starting it used to go to Madison Street and were like, hey, we're starting a new church. And so Mom and dad had felt that their family was led to that church.
Okay.
And we had to pray about it as a newly married couple, which is a big decision. All my family's moving away from this church. And we had to decide a very heavy decision very quickly. I'm sorry, but God is calling us to stay here. And which was tough, especially because COVID hit right after that, and nobody,
like churches closed down.
Yeah. So, and we had an interim, all the different stuff. So we were like, did we make the right choice? Was that really what God was telling us? And then Richard shows up, and we were like, oh yeah, no, we we did the right thing. We really love our choice.
Richard's the lead pastor at that church, and he's a good friend, snowbird friend, good friend of mine, awesome dude. Callahan, he's a pastor. He's the guy that brings students to SWO. I've known Callahan since maybe 2020, 2021. I was speaking at a pastor's conference in Jacksonville, and Richard brought Callahan. You kind of meet some people, and you're like, oh, man, this guy, we're on the same team, same tribe. And the Lord had really used him in your life, I know. We'll get into that. That really plays into y'all's story as we're about to get into that story. But what was your history with him? So you had known him prior?
I didn't know him at all until he started. We were Madison Street was his first job as a youth pastor.
So he was your youth pastor?
Yes.
He started my junior year.
Okay.
And we are the reason he now has all of his rules in place.
Yep.
We really trialed him by fire.
Trial by fire.
For sure.
Welcome to youth ministry.
Welcome to youth ministry.
Hey, you did him a favor, man.
And he was like 25 or something. Like, he was young. He wasn't that much older than we were. You know what I mean?
It's really been really cool to see Callahan and his wife Delaney change and grow as everyone else has in ministry. Just because we get there and they're kids, older than we are, but but like they weren't quite sure what to do. We were kind of finding loopholes on what we can do, and just seeing everybody grow. But he's done a great job. It's really been great having Callahan there in youth, and it's really been fun as an adult now talking with him, as he's become our best friend, him and Delaney.
Yeah, that was like right after high school.
Telling him stories, and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad y'all didn't do that when I was there. And I'm like, you were there.
I'm so glad we did it.
You were there.
Callahan's so faithful, and he's. We came to y'all's church on Easter Sunday, maybe 3 years ago. We were staying. There's a lot of lakes in y'all's area, and we were. I don't know if y'all remember this, but we just walked in, and I didn't know he could sing. And that dude gets up there, and I don't even remember what he sung now, but my wife Little is like, no, I don't want to say critical. She just appreciates music. I'm just like, yeah, that guy sings good. But I like Dwight Yoakam, so I don't know how good my taste is, Yeah. But when somebody's legit, and Little's like, we're in church, and she goes, oh my goodness, this guy's phenomenal. Shout out, Callahan's an NSR listener. He'll listen to this.
Yeah, he's gonna have a hard time walking through doors after this podcast. That's for sure.
That head.
Yeah, no, he's very humble, but except in board games, he'll tell you right now he has the Lord's favor in board games. Okay. He's not humble there.
Not a bad. So. That's a good place to have Lord's favor.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Really?
Yeah,
like 9 out of 10 times he beats us.
He wins.
Has to be Lord's favor. Has to be.
It'll be me, Blake, Callahan, and Delaney, and we're like, board game night. It's just everybody against Callahan. We're just going to try to make him lose
everybody
tonight. That's the game.
100%.
But then I'll trade, and Delaney just looks at me like, why are you breaking the rules? Do not trade with Callahan. We're going to lose.
Okay, so is this like, I think it was Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the library, or is this like
we're talking Catan?
Okay, this is more the strategy games.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
All right.
Yeah,
because now,
or even just random, like he still wins at like exploding kittens, and all you do is flip a card and hope for the best.
Some people just have favor in those ways. That's why it's an extreme love language for me to play card games with her.
She loves that
because she'll win. I don't care what the game is, she'll win. Wins. But I asked her to play checkers. We were newly married one time. She was traveling with me for a job, and I thought right then and there she was just gonna be like, you know what, I'm done. She's like, I despise checkers, and we're newly married. I was like, I had no idea, and so I had immediately stepped on toes, and we've never played checkers again.
That's hilarious. So. That's fun. Checkers almost created.
You just walk by checkers, and I'm like, remember that day? Yeah, we're not gonna play that game no more.
So let's get into. I'd like to get into y'all's. First off, y'all's story. You shared it with me the other night, and I was like, man, I really want the NSR crowd to hear this. Because it's a powerful, and it's still an ongoing, unfolding. We're all still in our story. If you're breathing and living, you're still in your story. So I want to be real clear. Anytime I have someone on NSR, I like to make sure people understand we're not telling you a story that has now come to an end unless that person has passed. And we've done episodes for, we did one on my father-in-law. I kind of told his story, and it's like, yeah, that story's come to an end. But y'all are in the thick of life. I mean, you got two little girls. What are their ages?
Beautiful girls. One is about to be 3. The other one is 6 months right after we get home.
All right. Yeah. So buckle up. Girl dad life is the life for me. I also raise boys, and that is a different animal. They do things like drink out of the creek and go to the bathroom places they shouldn't. And, so, being a girl dad's awesome. So y'all are in the middle. I mean, you got baby girls. I mean, life is beginning for you, but
yes.
it almost didn't get started. That's what we want to get into. It almost derailed before we could even see the Lord start to build and grow this family. And so let's go back to your dad was a firefighter. So that's the path you took. You're going into nursing. You become a firefighter. That
was the dream.
Always wanted to do that.
That was life.
Yeah.
You see your dad in that role. And most firefighters are that way. Most firefighters are second generation, third generation. There are some who are like, yeah, it's the first time. But you can't see a male figure in your life in that role and not be like,
I want to do that.
That's the tip of the spear right there. That's the manly job, like that guy right there. That was it. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I told her that in high school, and I had to do some odd and end jobs before I could get there. I let her finish school first, and then it was my turn. But that was always the goal.
So you get into that career field. How long were you in that before you started to realize trauma and death, and you're showing up on people's worst day? And how long did that into the career before that became a reality?
They start telling you in school, like they start preparing you mentally, and and you see pictures and you're studying cases, and calls and going through scenarios. But I mean, day one, you show up on the job, somebody calls, and it's not a test. It's not a like, hey, we're going to start them off easy. People die every day. People have terrible events happen every day.
So what was the day one call? What was your first call?
Day one call, to be honest, and this just gives an insight into first responders. Not 90% of the job is medical. 5% of the job is embarrassing things and really nasty stories. And then about 5% is fires. So my first call really to break me in, and everybody in the department thought it was really funny, was a woman who needed help getting out of a chair.
She a big
so
girl.
That way they could replace the chair with a new one. And yes, very heavy. And anyway, so as the rookie and
Send
the new guy
in.
They thought this was right up his alley. And unfortunately, there are a lot of smells in this environment. Your nose gets broken pretty quick. You can't sit here. You don't want to make anybody feel bad. You don't want to make them seem like you're judging them. Her. So you're just sitting here with a smile on your face.
You're still like showing the love of Christ. Okay. You're not able to stand up on your own. And
this is the worst smell I've ever smelled in my life. So anyway, we come in, and it takes multiple of us. We get her up, and then we have to hold her here while they say, while you're here, can you help us change her?
Oh.
And you are a public servant. Yes, ma'am. Yes, we can.
Wow.
And then we help her in her new chair. And so that right there just really gets you into, calls that you don't think you're going to go on in school. They don't tell you, hey, you're going to go to really nasty, embarrassing calls that seem not 911
worthy.
You should not have pressed 911. You should have called your daughter-in-law.
Yeah, call family. But that is the sad reality. Is family isn't there. There's no family.
Yeah, she's alone.
So, so that was my first call. But then immediately after that, it was a rollover with 2 teens. Luckily, they were okay. But, I mean, you're rolling up, and you're this new guy, this new kid, and all of a sudden you're like, that truck is totaled. Oh, my gosh, they have to be dead. I'm like, no, they're out there. And you're like, oh, okay, that's good. But then you'll show up, and it's a, fender bender, and you're like, oh, okay, everybody must be okay. No, he had a heart attack when he hit that car. So there's no
it almost
softening.
Seems arbitrary who dies and who survives sometimes.
It makes you numb to it. And honestly, this whole, and I'm glad to be doing this. It is a privilege to be here. And, first responders, firefighters, law enforcement, they don't talk about it. They don't talk about the job. Mm-hmm. And like we said the other night, You don't want to seem like a victim. You don't want to seem like this person who's like, I can't handle this, and then also like being that PTSD and stuff is new. If you get diagnosed with that, they'll take you off the job.
You
got
to hide it.
Yeah, you're talking about guys who've been on the job now and are afraid to lose pensions, retirements, whatever, and all of a sudden they're, like, hey, listen, I'm struggling here. They're quick, like, all right, well, you need to either be on light duty or you need to be like medically, like, what is it? Let's say like you're medically unfit, and basically they like will retire you right there, like you're on, medical mental leave, and so people don't want that. People don't open up, and you also don't want to feel like less of a man, and so you bottle it up. But that's why the number one cause of firefighter death for a long time was heart attacks and cancer. 1 out of 3 firefighters die of cancer every year. And so then now the new highest cause of death is suicide. And so you got to think, if 1 out of 3 are dying of cancer, how many are dying of suicide? It's real rampant. We had it in multiple departments when I was working all around us. And so I think it's good to talk about it. As hard as it is for me to especially talk about what we will here in a minute, it's important.
Yeah, and one thing we always I try to do on NSR is from time to time really shine a light on the service. I don't like to use the word sacrifice. I hate that word. Jesus was sacrificed. I have a hard time, even as patriotic as I am, thinking of, I did the Murph on Memorial Day. I did the Murph workout, and you think of Michael Murphy, and yes, his life was sacrificed for the freedom of this country and for the, that's a big deal to me. But I love that it's called service. It's a life of service because you're serving, and it's, to me, that there's as big a gospel component to that. Same in the medical field. It's the same in the medical field. Even though y'all aren't first responders, Jesus said, Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life. Now, to serve and to sacrifice, and so I think a lot of times, so sacrifice is those people that die in the line, but service is what consumes your entire career. And I think about you going on that first call. That's a bad day for that lady, who's created in God's image, who's probably completely humiliated, or maybe she's at a point in her life where this is just her lot in life, and she's like, but that's, and so you're serving. You ain't saving nobody's life, but you're serving. And I want to have people on here like y'all, because a lot of our listeners live in that. We have a ton of firefighters, Leos, military veterans, active duty military. And I always want to shine a light on that, but I don't want to do it in a cheesy way where it's like, thank you for your service. I'm going to pick up your tab. That's great. But I want stories to be told, and especially stories that intersect with the gospel. And so there's pretty early in your career, you have one of those life-changing calls that you go on.
Way earlier than I expected. And, and I love the way you look at that. Thank you for your service, not sacrifice. The men and women who are on the job, whether it's law enforcement, firefighter, even military, right? The mental thing there is, it's the job. That's our job. Whether, and people are like, how do you run into that building, or how do you do this, or whatever? It's the job. She asked me some questions. She's like, like on that you call, we'll talk about here in a minute. Like, did you not look? And I'm like, no, you don't look. You just are told go, and you go. And it's not, oh, look at me. Every man and woman on the job does that because that's what they want to do. And so even the 343 firefighters who died, during 9/11, them guys right there would have told you, this is my job.
Mm-hmm.
Them guys didn't have to go in. They said, we're going.
Yeah.
And so, it's a lot. But at the same time, they are eager and they're ready. And that is a really cool thing, because I didn't realize how much time, even in 2 years, I had missed with our first daughter, until I'm out and we're looking at videos, and I'm like, why, Taylor goes, she's like, what's funny is all these videos we have is because I had to send them to you.
Mm.
And I was like, I had no idea that I missed that much.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, it's quick. Yeah, no, life-changing calls happen real quick. And honestly, I think if any firefighter or law enforcement officer, anybody really listening, if they were really take a moment to reflect on it themselves, they would admit every day you see something that bothers you. You push it back. I hope you open up to somebody and you talk about it, whether it's a brother on the force, brother in your department, or hopefully you have a good Christian brother that you can come to and get good spiritual advice. Because what I had found is you build a deep relationship with the people you serve with. Your life is in their hands. You fully trust these people, and you go to for advice. And it's not their fault. But if somebody is not a Christian and they're not pursuing God, they might give you good advice, but it's not the advice you need. And there's no hope sometimes in that advice. Sometimes their advice comes from a place of hurt as well. Here's what I did, and I'm doing okay. So I would highly encourage someone to find a good Christian brother, even if they're not on the department, right? We think that like people don't want to hear what we see.
Bible calls you to like bear one another's burdens.
Yes, but it's a heavy burden, and that's why. And I'm hoping that I don't get emotional here in a minute, but it's a heavy burden, and you almost kind of like, I don't want to put that on somebody else because I didn't want that on me.
Right.
I didn't want to see that in the first place. So it's kind of like secondhand smoking. Like I chose to smoke, they didn't choose to smoke. So anyway, you don't really know how fast your life will get changed or what you will see, because everybody has an emergency every day. And there are blissful days where you won't get a single call. You'll show up for all 24 hours and you can wash your truck, take a nap, do some training, work out. And it's just a wonderful day with the guys. And then the next day is cardiac arrest, a stroke, a fire, a wreck. And it's everything. The world falls apart and you're the one they call to fix it. A huge burden. We even talked about the other day, I started to, because it's such a big job and I was so excited to be a part of this. I saw my dad do it and I look up to him so much in that I very quickly was like, this is my identity. I removed myself outside of like, oh, I'm a Christian first and above all else. I became a firefighter.
And too, that's like a big part of our culture, I think, to just perpetuate like people working to make other things happen. We all have to work together to make life go around, and like, so it's almost like perpetuated in your culture. Like, oh, it's not like, oh, who are you? It's like, oh, hey, my name's Taylor. What do you do?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's very insightful. And I think that is tied to when you look at Genesis 3 and God is sort of, he's cursing the earth basically because of sin. And he talks about how Adam is going to have to labor and toil and strive, but that the earth is not going to cooperate. That's not when work became a thing. Before the fall, God had told Adam to work. Work was to be stewardship and partnership with God. So work was part of God's original design. But then after the fall, there becomes tension where work is hard, but it's also, I think that's where it became an identifying characteristic for people. This is what I do.
Yeah.
If it's not who you are, but but I don't want to discount, but it is a big part of shaping and forming who you are, but it's not your identity. It's an identifying characteristic of you.
All through the Bible, though, people are discriminated. I'm a shepherd, so I'm going to live in this region, and you're going to stay here because you're a lot better than I am. You're Egyptian, so you get to stay in the nice places, but I'll take care of the cattle, and I'll do the hard work.
Yeah.
And
that's insightful. That's a good thought. So let's get into that call that started to, I think, turn for you. It started to change you.
You asked my parents, which obviously they're not here to confirm that, but always a big heart, always cares. My dad picks, and so I pick. That's how the men are, but we care a lot, and that's seeing Dad help people. That's what I wanted to do. So you did your best to put on a front, like, oh yeah, these calls don't bother me, but they stacked up pretty quick, and so I think it wasn't until we had a little bit of trauma in our lives that really I just started to snowball, because like we talked about the other night, it's really easy to be like, oh, I have hope. God's working everything out for their good. You know what I mean? Like I see this family lose this person in this way, and I see all this death or life-changing injury, and I'm like, okay, God will make that good. God will make that good. And then my life is impacted, and I immediately like, you know what, so the hope started to go away, and the first
and that your life being impacted outside of the job, but something that y'all went through is what you're talking about. Okay.
You want to talk about that? It was
we miscarried a baby in between our two daughters, and it was I have never been more blindsided. Our first pregnancy was perfect, so I guess assumed, and then as soon as you get pregnant, you imagine life as like, oh, in 9 months our life's gonna look like this, in 3 years it's gonna look like this, and then in one ultrasound it goes from hope for the future to just a completely different outlook, and somehow you just feel like you grieve a person you never met. Sorry.
It's
you grieve a person that you never got to meet, but you love just as much as like I do my first daughter, Sorry.
I told you the other night.
Just rattled my faith, and like I got saved in 9th grade, and that was the first time where I was like, oh, like we talked about this week, like God uses all things for our good and for His glory, and like up until that incident, I could see like no matter what, God's sovereign and mighty and all powerful over everything. But then I was like, I was just angry because I still knew that I didn't believe that any less. And that made me more angry because I was like, if you were all powerful, like you could have said, okay, like you could have said yes and brought my baby here to perfection, you know what I mean? And created them in my womb like only the master can do. And anyways, it was, sorry, it was difficult, very, very difficult, and I was shaken in a way that had never been shaken and torn down, and Blake had to lead me as a husband, and like he had never had to lead me before because I don't know, like he's a good husband and a good spiritual leader, but he had never had to lead me to Christ like that because I was I could feel myself actively pushing him. When I told him, like I talked to him about it, I was like, I don't believe in God any less, and I don't deny any of the truths that I know of Him to be true, but I also know that I'm angry. Like, I'm just angry. I'm angry that you could have just kept that little baby's heart beating, and he decided not to. I just felt like, and so I pushed him away. Like, I quit reading my Bible. I quit praying. Like, basically, like whenever you get mad at somebody, or when somebody gets mad at somebody, I don't really do this, and they just like bring it up again just to be like, I can't believe you did that bad thing. You're so, like I would just communicate, and it would come from a place of like, it's like I missed my best friend. Like my heart was like aching and longing, to be close to the Father again. And my mind was like, how can you, like, there's no forgiveness. I can't forgive you for taking my baby away. And I told him that. I was like, I've never felt like more like distant from the Lord, but also I've never felt the Lord pulling me so hard back and felt actively like, if you're going to pull me this hard, like why just leave me alone? I just want to be far away. And he was like, don't be far. Like I could just feel him like your heart aches whenever you're homesick from like your family. I don't get homesick from my home. I could say it's a place, but like if we're apart for too long, I'm like, my heart like aches for you. I just want to be back close again. And my heart was just aching for so long, and I was like, I just want to ache. I just want to feel my baby. I'm not gonna have whoever it was. Our first daughter says it was a brother. She still talks about her brother. I'm like, okay, thank you. Let him know. But it was just hard. I don't remember where that started.
We talked the other night about one thing I think about with our miscarriages is that I'm gonna in the sermon text yesterday in Spencer's sermon, he had Romans 8:18. I consider the suffering of this present time not worth comparing to the glory that's to be revealed. And knowing that that child's gone before me, has experienced that glory, is waiting for me. It's going to be, I did a deep dive study into heaven this past year. I'm almost old enough to get the senior coffee discount at McDonald's, and it's the first time I've ever, in my 30-some year Christian life, got saved when I was 20. It's the first time I've ever studied heaven, and I got so excited. Like it just changed my life thinking about this. And but in the moment, the point being, you're in a difficult spot. So now you're back to what you were saying, Blake. You're dealing with this at home. You still got to go to work, and work is trauma and death, and you end up you couldn't internalize it all. You couldn't compartmentalize it all. And then work starts to now have a different impact because you're so beat up personally.
I don't in no way blame Taylor for me not being able to cope or have time to process, because she was hit hard by the miscarriage right away. And so I was doing my absolute best to be there for her and encourage her. And you're right, the job just kept going. And so that was a very hard time to leave and experience pain and come home and experience pain. And I would love to say that I was just strong enough to just deal with it and fight it. But I know that one of my prayers that I started praying when I got on the job was the horrors of what you see isn't necessarily the pain, but it's seeing the family's reaction, seeing the loss that the families go through. And I'd pray, I was like, I don't want to see that. I don't want that to be me. And it quickly became us, and in no way the same as some families losing a child that they've known for years. You know what I mean? That's also just different. But still, it was a pain for us. And one of the calls that goes right in there with it that I think about, and it goes hand in hand. I think it's one of the reasons why I've never really been able to forget that call. And I never had nightmares about the job, and I if there's first responders listening, you know what I mean? I know I'm talking more than most first responders do, but I want to try and help somebody if I can. I never had nightmares about the job or saw the calls in my mind until I quit. When I quit, that's when I saw them. And one of the ones that stick with me the worst and really was in my mind about that one was we went to a call for an overdose. And, you go in, I'm walking behind the medics, I'm carrying everything. And the friend who had come to, I guess, check on the lady, see the lady, whatever, had found her. And so he's leading us back into the back room. And as we pass, I see this 10-year-old girl in her pajamas and on her iPad. All kids are on iPads now. Not our kids. But anyway, she's on her iPad. And so we walk past. And we get to the back room. And that's where we find the younger mother, I want to say, mid-20s, a lot of life left to live, had decided, I guess, when she went to bed to take some fentanyl. And we all know how fentanyl is affecting the country. We all know the outcome of that. And so she obviously overdosed. And if that's not sad enough, it's amazing the details your mind won't let you forget. Meanwhile, you'll forget some of the sweetest things. She, when she overdosed, was holding her 2-month-old. You know, 2-month-olds can't do much, right? Kids are limp. Kids are there. They do whatever you have them do. They're along for the ride. But this little 2-month-old had enough fight in it to where this kid's got just a handful of the mom's hair and just ripped out, fighting for its life. But unfortunately, she overdosed. She smothered it. And so you sheet both of them. You're already scarred. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, gosh, this is terrible. And you're walking out. And I'm just lucky enough as we're walking out behind the medics carrying everything. You're always trying to avoid, especially a call where families nearby, like, I'm going to walk. I'm going to let somebody else tell them whatever the outcome is. And the 10-year-old girl looks up at me and the people I'm with. And she said, is my mom up yet with baby sis to take me to school? What do you say to that? You just walked out. So it's tough. So yeah, seeing that kind of loss, especially so young, and then having that, it was,
Oh, I think our miscarriage happened, and then that call happened. And then you came, I remember, because I remember being angry about that all over again. Like, that woman, I don't know her story, but she was able to carry a baby fully and healthy to the end of her pregnancy.
And kill it.
And then the baby just died, and I'm like, I loved my baby, and I didn't even get to meet him yet. And then you got to meet your baby, and it passed away.
Yeah, that's hard.
So I started developing a hardness in my heart for the Lord. I basically told him, I was like, what love is there? You know what I mean? Like, I know that, pain and suffering doesn't come from you, but I mean, what good is it to bring a child into the world or allow someone to get pregnant, or all these different things for just to end like that, because you know everything. Why would you do that? And so my heart started to really harden very quickly. And I started to really distance myself from the Lord. And I just wanted to run. And I didn't want anything to do. I stopped praying. And I was like, you know what? I need a break. I was like, I don't see your love. I don't see the hope. You know what I mean? And
there was another call, and I would imagine any first responder would agree that, and as a pastor, it's crazy. It's a completely different experience, but on those worst days that people have, we always will also get called. And I've done more than my share of funerals for babies, children, horrible circumstances where you're as y'all do the physical triage, or you're dealing with the physical loss, and then we come in and we're dealing with spiritual loss, and it's always so much harder when it's a kid. And so you're the question that you're talking about, Taylor, that is the question. I don't know how it is in the state of Florida, but in the state of North Carolina, there are far more children in need of foster care than there are foster families and then the foster families that there's so few that are gospel driven. There are a lot of Christians obviously in foster care that the gospel motivates us to that, but there are a lot that aren't. Probably the majority are, but why don't more Christians? So where my mind goes in these situations is, as believers, how are we supposed to respond? Well, you can't respond to a lady dies and smothers her kid, right? Where, it's kind of like, well, if a kid gets taken from their mom, where's the church? Christians need to step up. Let's do orphan care. Let's do foster care. Let's do widow care. But what makes these circumstances so difficult is there is no follow-up. There's nothing you can do. Show up, baby's dead. Just like
closure.
There's no closure. And there's a story that you told me that y'all shared the other night with multiple kids involved. And was that later then?
It was.
Are you comfortable sharing that? Because to me, that's a monumental part of y'all's story.
Yeah, and it was a little later. Actually, no, the multiple kids, I think that had come first. That was in October. We had our miscarriage in January, and then it was the baby. And seeing a lot of stuff all in between, just like every first responder has, like I said, every day, you don't know what's coming down. You don't know what the tones are dropping. You don't know what's going to be on the other end. But yeah, that call that really started to get me in a dark place was, as a first responder, that's your job. Go and save somebody, right? That's what you want to do. I want to save. The hard part that we have to accept as firefighters, law enforcement, you're called after. You respond. You can't prevent. And so we got a call one morning. It was 8:30 in the morning. That typically doesn't happen. It's weird to get a call to a structure fire that's one in the daytime, especially in the morning. It just kind of caught us off guard. Oh, that's kind of strange. Maybe it's a false alarm. But it wasn't. One of the worst calls that our department had seen for a long time. Our department served in a very big area with very little manpower, and so luckily we had a rescue and a brush truck out near that call. You're talking 3 people, 3 bodies. 2 were firemen, 1 was just a medic, and they get there within, I want to say, 5 to 7 minutes of the call. Now, granted, everybody else in the world is coming, but it takes everybody else in the world, including me, 18 minutes to get here. That's a lifetime, especially because you got to think, no matter the calls, it had to happen first for someone to call. So there's already time that's elapsed before this. So they get there. I do believe it was the parents who, and this is from their account, had stumbled into the yard from the house, and the house is fully involved. And the parents are in rough shape. The parents had suffered burns externally, internally, and all they were able to manage to say was, "We have kids in the house." So you hear that, especially, I mean, it is funny. People think every time they see an engine going down the road with its lights on that it's super serious, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're singing to Taylor Swift or something like that, and they're going down the road because it's a way of coping. It's an everyday thing. You might see their lights on, but they're going to something that's, not crazy at the moment. But other times, especially when you hear structure fire, right? You hear MVA, you hear, the big calls. You're focused. You're right back into school. You're right back into your training. You're right back into how they taught you. You're thinking about apartment protocols and procedures. What do we do? What are our stages? And it only gets cranked up whenever you hear there's children inside. Anybody inside, right? To experience, and firefighters listen to tell you, you put on that gear, right? I told you the other night, especially that's a hard part of starting to identify as a firefighter, because you put on the bunker gear, you feel invincible. I can take on the world. I am Superman, right? You take this on, you're important, and you can do things. But that gear saves you from a lot, but it's still hot. And you know what it feels like in that gear. And I told you when I went into this house, I was so upset with myself. I thought that I forgot my hood. It was burning my ears up, but I had it on. I found out after I had it on. It was just that hot. And so you're sitting here thinking there's people inside. Every second matters, and it's only getting hotter. And so everybody's getting there. Everybody's doing their job. Everybody's doing a fantastic job. They're doing everything they're supposed to be doing. Sheriff's office is helping. Everybody's doing their part to help as fast as possible. As fast as people are getting brought out, the medics are treating them. I know by the time I have arrived with our tanker and the chief has pulled me off and he sends me inside, he hands me our thermal imaging camera, and the only thing the chief says is, "Go find them." And so I would love to sit here and say that every time we go on a call, we're able to follow protocol. NFPA states, like, you have 2 firefighters in, you need to have 2 firefighters out ready to go in. You can't do that all the time. Sometimes you are by yourself, and the law would sit here and look at you like, "No, you broke a rule." Like, I don't care in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Every law enforcement officer or firefighter, right? They're doing the job to help people. And so, fine, take away my certification, but I'm not going to look somebody in the eye and say, "I've got to wait for somebody." No, they're not. They didn't call you to hear, "I've got to wait." So I go inside. I help our lieutenant carry out an adult who I don't think we were expecting. He was a friend living there. I help grab his legs, and He's burned pretty good, but not too bad. We get him outside. He didn't make it. And I go back in. And like I said, you don't look outside. You do a size up when you get there. The initial officer, the initial firefighter will give a scene size up and look at everything. But other than that, they've already done that. You get there, you go to work. So I go in. We don't realize how bad the house is. I know one of the guys that said that they already searched this room, so I start heading to a different room, and it's just chaos inside this place. And little did I know the room that I had started in was the most compromised room of the house. Had to be where it started. I go through the floor, and I'm by myself. Number one rule that we don't go by ourselves. And so I go through the floor, and
as in you fall, the floor collapses or it caves. You fall through it.
I did, okay. Yeah. So, and I don't remember a loss of consciousness. I can't tell you how much time had elapsed. I really don't think it was long. But I go through the floor and I hit my helmet. I mean, you're talking, like I weigh 234. Our gear is good 50 to 75 pounds on top of that. And I go down and I hit my head on the frame / crossbeam that's underneath trailers. And all I remember is hearing a guy who came in behind me calling for me. And so I picked myself up out of the floor. I was hanging halfway through. And I go to him and he's like, where did you leave off from? And I was like, this room is not survivable. I was like, I can't even go in here. It's just a danger. And as much as that hurts to say, they train you have to look out for yourself and the other responders on scene, because if you go down, who do we call?
Mm-hmm.
If you go down, you can't help anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, I remember just us saying, this room's gone. You had other teams searching other parts of the house. And so we're focused on this area, and I go into a bedroom and, I look everywhere as best I can. All around the bed, top of the bed, under the bed, everywhere. I find what I think is a child, and in the heat of it, you start dragging what you believe is to be a victim out. And I get almost all the way out, and it's the dog, and the dog's already dead. And so, children over dogs any day. So you drop the dog and you go back. And I get back in the room. I pick up where I'm at, and I don't find anything. And at this point, we're all in 2 or 3 bottles. And what I mean by that is our bottles, they're 45-minute bottles now, but whenever you're huffing and puffing, and especially you're out of shape, that bottle's doing 15 to 30 minutes. And we're all 2-3 bottles deep. A lot of bigger departments, they're in, they're out 1 bottle. But we wouldn't stop. And so I come out and I look at the chief. I'm like, we had to have found them all, right? He said, no, there's still one. And I remember thinking, I was like, there's, wherever they're at, the other teams will find them. You know what I mean? There's no way that I've missed anybody. And little did I know, after I had already sat down, some people had noticed that I had been acting a little strange, and they, later on said, signs of a concussion, whatever. They had me sit down in the rehab area. The 2 guys who got there initially had went back in, and they went through the back window. I think a grandparent maybe or somebody had arrived and told them, like, this is where the kids mainly are. I can't remember, but they go back in and they find a baby. And for some reason, this baby was kept in a bassinet in the closet. And I didn't see a closet. And or at least I didn't see anything in that closet. You're sweeping your hand around, trying to find everything. My partner had taken the camera, and you're sweeping. I didn't see it. And you can say all day long, it doesn't matter. That kid was most likely already gone, because none of the kids made it. We got everybody out, but too late. And I hold myself responsible. So you deal with that, and you you see this is your Monday, this is your whatever, and then you're supposed to go home and be
super dad.
Yeah, super dad. So, just a lot. So anyway, it just all started stacking up, and eventually, like, after all this happened, I said, I've had enough. I don't see the hope anymore. I don't see the good. I was like, God, wherever you are, it's not here. And so I turned my back on him. And the second I did that, I mean, I found the lowest point that I'd ever seen. I grew up, good, godly Christian parents, good, godly Christian home. I did exactly what my parents wanted me to. Never, nothing a good spanking couldn't fix. It was never anything bad. And
we call them whoopings in the mountains.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I imagine Eric give a whooping.
Spanking was from mom, whooping was from dad. But other than that, I'd never experienced a time that I had really pushed away the Lord and experienced what my life would be like without him. And it just started getting darker and darker. And eventually I just got miserable. There's no joy left, because little did I know until I really found out for myself later that the Lord is our joy. Our joy is found in the Lord. That is it. That's why the world looks at us and says, what is different about them? It's because they have joy. Why are they so happy? Why do they have hope right now and I do not? And so when I turned away from it, I lost that joy. And like I said, you take in brothers, you take in advice, and I'm like, oh, I love my job. I love my job. It's the best job in the world. And it really is a great job being able to help people. And it's a manly job, heavy tools, busting stuff up, and through advice from others and my own mind, I was like, I must be unhappy at home. And it took a lot, but I came to Taylor and I was like, hey, listen, I'm unhappy, this or that, whatever. And all of a sudden, I could have worked the next day. It just gets worse. I come home, I go back, come home, and eventually I told her, I was like, hey, listen, I want a divorce. Which is insane. Because I got in such a dark place. And I mean, this is my one and only, I saw her, ninth grade. And I was like, this is the woman I'm going to marry. And to go from just every step in life that we have wanting to do it together to be like, yeah, no, I need to start something new without you is mind blowing. And the shame and guilt has been, it's unbearable. And so once I had started that process and I had hurt her and I am running from the Lord, I was like, I can't stop now. I can't let him catch me. I can't turn and face what I've done. I just got to keep going. And God bless Callahan. For the youth pastors who are listening, your job is never done. Job is never done. The connections you build, they last forever. We talk all the time about how you can have the most fun at a game, you can have the coolest food, you can have the coolest looking youth building, but connections and relationships are what make people stay. And
not stay at the church, but stay
in the faith, stay in their walk, And so Taylor's going to Callahan, going to Delaney, our best friends, and she's telling them all this. Yeah, no. And I'd isolated myself. I was like, no, I don't want to go see Callahan. No, I don't want to go see Delaney because I'm running. And I know for a fact where Callahan's going to bring me. That's before the Lord. I don't want to be there. And so Callahan calls me one night. He's like, what are you doing? And we're talking about like loving, gentle Callahan. And Callahan gives me this conversation, and he's rough, and he's in my face over the phone, and he's just like, I mean, he called me out on everything. And he's like, what are you doing? And he helped me realize, we had a conversation. He was like, Blake, are you saved or not? And I was like, I am. I know I am. I got saved at your house, and he's like, okay. He said, well, you're either going to continue running from the Lord to the point where you're not going to, like, you're basically saying, I don't want to be used by you. He said, and Christians who aren't useful for the kingdom, Christians who refuse to do their job, their task, what has been placed before them, he said, you're basically looking at sin unto death. The Lord just says, all right, I'm just going to bring you home because I might as well. And he said, but then also you need to consider you're saved. People who are saved, we are held accountable for the sins we have here on earth. We stand before God with Christ in front of us, right? And he looks at Christ and he says, okay, well done. Good job. He said, but what you will be held accountable for, he said, are the blessings and responsibilities that the Lord has blessed you with and what you've done with that. He said, you have been blessed as a father. You've been blessed as a husband. And what are you doing with it? And I immediately on the phone, Callahan didn't even believe me. He didn't believe me on the phone. I was like, you're right. He's like, don't tell me what I don't want to hear. I was like, no. I had ran, and I knew that if I just let a little bit of light, let God back in my life just a little bit, that all that darkness I was trying to hide up, it would just fall apart. And so I realized that these terrible choices I was making were all because I finally got to see in a life of, like I said, growing up, not doing really anything bad, but a life, and finally getting to see how my brokenness, where it can get me, how broken I am and how much I need Christ in my life, right? To see to feel his joy, to feel his presence, to see how he can, see what he made me to be. I did not know how much I needed him until this moment. And I wish it didn't take this moment for me to figure that out. But it was life-changing. I came to Taylor after that phone call. I got home. I was out. I got home. I woke her up. And I was like, I'm wrong. I'm so wrong. And Taylor's like, what do you mean? I was like, everything is so wrong. I said, I need forgiveness. And I understand if you can't give it to me now. I said, but I want everything back. And I never want to go back to where I am right now. I said, and I vow to you as our children's father, as your husband, I said, we will never get to this point again. And, we had come to terms. I was like, the job. It's a good job. I still love that job. I said, but for our family, I got to step back from this job immediately. And it was, side note, don't think that I just completely, left with no backup plan. But even if I didn't have a backup plan, I knew what needed to happen for my family. And we were done for now. And it was something that needed to happen drastically, and it did. And I'll let you just speak to, that moment and what's happened after, because I can sit here and say all day long, oh no, I've changed, or, I'm doing better. But you're always honest. And
that moment when he came to you and said, when Blake came to you and said, I want a divorce. I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. Can you talk a little bit about, was that a complete blindside?
I mean, it was.
Or had you felt like, okay, we're growing apart, or he's becoming distant, or
I knew something was wrong with him.
Was up.
He wasn't himself. It was quick. It was like, oh, he's his normal, chipper, happy-go-lucky. You know what I mean? Of course, we would talk about stuff from the job, and I would talk to him about it, as much as he definitely didn't want me to bear any of his burdens from work. And so he would be like, you don't need to know about that. I'm like, well, somebody needs to know about it. You're gonna have to share about it. But so he went from his normal self to something's off with Blake. I don't really know what's going on. And he'd come home from work. I'm like, hey, are you doing okay? He's like, yeah, I'm good. Why? I'm like, you just don't seem yourself. You would be more short-tempered or frustrated, or our daughter would do something that was her normal behavior, and he would just get extra angry. And I was like, why? She's 1 or 2. She was little. I'm like, she's 18 months old. She's going to be an 18-month-old.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went from that to I don't know, something's going on. You're doing these things that are making me unhappy. I'm like, none of these things are fresh. We've been together for 9 years. There are things that we've done the whole time we've been together.
I turned every little thing into something.
Yeah, he was trying to find a reason to run away, it felt like. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then it was I want to get a divorce. And I was like,
What?
I was like, because of these like little things that you think like now that they matter, I don't even remember what the things were because they were so insignificant. I was like,
Nothing.
like there's nothing wrong. And he was like, I've been thinking about it, and like I think you need to make a plan for you or whatever. I'm definitely going to be involved in the girl's life. Like I'm not going to be a dad who's going to walk out on them, but I just don't think we need to be married anymore. And I was like, excuse me. And I was just like, I was taken aback, and I was like, like all of the stuff that had been going on up until this point, the Lord's like, you need to love your husband. You have to love your husband well. And I'm like, after like he's doing all these horrible things, I'm like, he is not acting like my husband that I love. Why do you want me to love him well, if at all? Like I want to be mean to him and spiteful, and he just like kept weighing on my heart, like you need to love, just pray over him, love your husband, love your husband. And I was like, I don't like him. I don't like him right now. I don't want to love him right now. And he came to me and he was like, I want to get a divorce. And I told him no. And he was like, you're not allowed to say no. And I was like, I am saying no, because I said yes. And I said yes to from now to death. And we're alive. And I'm saying no. And it was a few times that you like came back and you were like, Taylor, I want to get a divorce. I don't think we need to be married anymore. Like, this isn't good for us. Like, we're going in opposite directions. So these things are what he brought up, whatever reasons they were. And I looked him in the eyes and said, I'm not getting a divorce. He was like, I'm getting someone to drop papers. I was like, you can drop all the papers that you want to. I'm not signing them.
And we had backed. I mean, like I said, I was running so hard. We had backed out of church. We were no longer serving in any capacity because we weren't. I wasn't fit to. We weren't fit to.
Well, it was like right after our miscarriage, so I was already like very emotional, and like the Lord brought me back from that. It was, I don't know, like I still struggle, but like the Lord, I came back to good graces before this started, which was a blessing because I didn't know that. Like I needed to find like the love at the first. You know what I mean? I needed to fall in love with the Lord and into a relationship with him, and to be stronger than I was before, to be able to handle what was coming next, you know?
Mm-hmm. So from that moment to when he came and said, I was wrong, I'm sorry, forgive me, did that catch you? Like, were you like, what? Like, you're in a spot where, how are we going to get through this? How do I keep this marriage together? And then he just shows up one day and says that? Or was it like you started to see him soften and come around? What was that like?
Oh, no, it was like...
Abrupt. Like,
like you turned from something to flee the other way. Like, it was literally one night. We had
Did you feel like the weight of the world just went, or were you more like, I don't trust this?
I trusted it.
Okay.
I love him more than
he's worth having. You love him.
Yeah,
That's
so much
the
better.
beauty of marriage, gospel-centered marriage.
And I trusted it whenever he said it. But I told him, I love you, and I'm going to forgive you, but it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts really, really bad because if it's a gospel-centered marriage, like we got married for you to love me like Jesus loves me, you know, and you messed up. You messed up bad, and Jesus never did that.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't make me feel like I was less than or unlovable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It was the hardest, darkest part, and that's why it weighed on me heavy whenever you would ask. And I think when you initially asked, you thought it'd be more fun department stuff, a little bit more insight.
Not fun. It was, you had mentioned that house fire with those kids dying, but in my mind, I didn't know all this, so I was like, oh, Blake's solid, man. His faith drives him. Let's tell this story and be an encouragement of how God will carry you through this kind of situation, which is completely not what was going on. So no. I was way wrong, but this has turned into much more of a gospel story that
it's lined up perfectly, honestly, with this camp, with what y'all were doing this summer. I running what I did, you know, to see that horrible, horrible black hole in that part of our lives. Whenever you asked about this, I told Taylor, I said, this is the chance to have God take this and make this beautiful, right? And it's to show his glory, right? For him to use it for good, to help someone else. And if I say no, then I've completely wasted that horrible opportunity, and I'm denying the Lord a chance, right? And so I would definitely tell people, especially other first responders, don't let your identity become the job. Don't let it become the uniform. Don't let it dictate your character, because first and foremost, you are a child of God, and he has a path for you. And if you are doing like I was doing and you're just running, you're not wanting to face a decision you made, whether it's something that's already happened in the past or something that you're wanting to do, you've got to stop. You've got to turn around. You've got to face it. Because the other thing that I was thinking about and not wanting to stop running was because I had truly at this point felt that I'm beyond redemption. I am so far down this rabbit hole. How could God love me? I've turned from him, and I have now hurt the blessings that he has given me.
Yeah.
How could he take me back? And I tell you, I was actually listening to a SWO podcast when I broke down in my truck after I had said I'm wrong, and I'm just struggling with this whole, like, how can I even be loved by him again? You know, I'm expecting to die any day, because, like, how am I worth having here anymore? And, you know, in your podcast, you were talking, you're like, nobody can outrun the grace. There's no sin in your life that is bigger than his love. And there was another pastor who I had told you about in a video that Richard had showed. It was just the congregation, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. And the pastor basically had said, God has a plan for you, and you have a path in this life. God's plan basically winds around all of the ups and downs, all of the mountains and valleys. It goes around your mistakes. It goes around your wins, right? He's not caught off guard. And so if you weren't worth his time, or his love couldn't, extend to that, then he wouldn't have reached out in the first place. And he said, there's nothing in this life that he will not just accept and wash away. We talked about, in Matthew, ask and you shall receive, seek and you will find, and knock you may enter, refers to you see God and you ask him for forgiveness. You ask him to come into your life and change it. Ask him for redemption. It's a yes. It's never a no. There's nothing you can do. It's always a yes. And it's exactly what I needed to hear. And so when we had rejoined in getting involved in ministry, in rebuilding everything, rebuilding our parenting, rebuilding marriage, all I want to do is to help people avoid situations where they feel like I'm beyond redemption, and just showing them, say, no, you're not, because there are people like me who have been in the deepest valleys, and God has picked them up and said, I still love you no matter where you go. We sing a song this week, I left you and I got lost. I lost where I was, but you know exactly where I left you. You know exactly, and you picked me right back up, and you brought me right back. And so it's beautiful.
Thank y'all. It was a big ask for me to ask y'all to sit down and do this. You're asking people to go to the darkest, hardest moments of their life and to do it in front of cameras and on microphones. And
let's say publicly as a whole other thing.
But that's, we have a story and it needs to be told, and every believer has a story that needs to be told. And one of the things I love about NSR is I'm not interested in having celebrities on here. I'm not interested in finding all the SEAL Team 6 guys that are now YouTube influencers and interview. I don't listen to and watch a lot of stuff, but it seems like there's this whole world of podcasting and video, but it's the same 100 people interviewing each other about these big movie-worthy stories. I'm like, man, our tagline is stories from around the globe, and it's gospel stories of just people being faithful, people going through mess. What resonates with people that listen to NSR is a story like y'all's, because there's people listening to this that either have a similar story or are in the middle of it, or it's going to serve as something to guard against. And I'm just grateful y'all let the Lord use it. And what y'all doing this afternoon? Chilling?
We're going to go have fun with our kids.
Good. You deserve it. Enjoy. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to No Sanity Required. Please take a moment to subscribe and leave a rating. It really helps. Visit us at swoutfitters.com to see all of our programming and resources. And we'll see you next week on No Sanity Required.